Hi guys, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm. This is going to be the third part in the video series that I'm creating about spiritual help with body dysphoria. What kind of tools are available inwardly and outwardly to help with those kind of the symptoms that we experience emotionally, psychologically, as well as physically. Related to experiencing ourselves in a body that is not harmonious with our true selves. And so in the previous video, in the part 2, I was speaking about fear and how it causes the body itself at the deepest levels to manifest illness or disease or dysfunction or imbalance, and how successful we are or are not in manifesting the fullest possible change and transformation within ourselves due to our ability to recognize and own and work through the fear. So I spoke about specifically fears that I had experienced about what I was not or am not during the course of my life, up to the moment where I made a decisive move forward into taking on the physical transformation, and decided to transition from female to male. And those fears were about not being able to really own the qualities of the feminine, both emotionally, psychologically, and physically, all of the above, and what that was doing to my body, and what that was doing to me, inwardly causing resistance. So that's in the previous video. Feel free to check that out. Now I'm wanting to talk a little bit about, just very briefly, about the flip side of that fear, the complementary fear, which is about the fear of becoming. And that's something I really didn't have time to touch on before. I promise this will be brief, and then what I really want to do is move on to the solutions, some of the healing techniques and meditations and emotional and psychological advice that I can offer to help with the symptoms of body dysphoria. I don't like really using the word symptoms. It makes it so clinical and medical, but for lack of a better language, I should say maybe our way of experiencing ourselves in our body when it's not harmonious, when it's chaotic and contracted. So the related fear, the fear of becoming, at some point in time, in between beginning psychological counseling, already making the decision to live outwardly, presenting myself with a new name, and deciding that I was going to do everything I could to present as male in the world, and that somewhere in between that moment and a few months into receiving the testosterone, once I began hormone therapy, I found that I was experiencing some resistance to really embracing all of those qualities, and the qualities of the masculine and the qualities of the all of the things. It kind of a list developed of all of the things I didn't like and wasn't comfortable with. The kind of like, I don't want to be that kind of guy or that kind of guy, and can I pick and choose the qualities that I want to embrace? Well, not really. Some of it is a psychological choice. I don't have to choose to be a total asshole in the world, but I can. I can choose how I shape my responses. That's my responsibility to do so anyway, male, female. That's just, as a human being, that's what we have to do. But the things that are beyond my control to a certain degree, or at least seemingly, I didn't want to really face the fact that there were going to be aspects of my personality that were going to emerge that I may not like so much, and that there were parts of the whole experience of being a man that I might not like so much. And so I formed a tremendous amount of resistance to that. And what I learned in the process is that I was actually holding myself back from moving forward. And a lot of that was on the psychological, like the mental and emotional levels, and then some of it had to do with the actual experience of the body. I think that what I ended up doing with that is, I've got a great counselor, first of all, a good therapist. And she's, like me, she's trained in transpersonal psychology. And she's trained in art therapy. And she has a pretty spiritual outlook. And so I'm able to really speak to her on all of these different levels. And she can really offer me positive feedback. And work with me to kind of map out solutions. Oftentimes, I'm actually the one who does the mapping, and then she'll just kind of take a look at it and affirm it or tweak it, and give me an opportunity to refine my approach. But she trusts me to be in my own process because she knows that a large part of my discipline is this inner work. So that's great. But where this left me was I came with this map, and I'm like, I'm stuck here. Like, I don't know what to do with this particular nugget. What I'm seeing is I feel like I'm wanting to put the brakes on, before I was kind of putting the brakes on having to experience myself in a feminine body. Understandable, was kind of fighting against the spiritual guidance that I'd received to really embrace that path. That I get, and I can watch that very clearly, what was happening with my feelings and my thoughts, and what was going on in my body, how unhealthy I was making myself. While I struggled with trying to follow that guidance, that kind of directive. Now, you would think that I would be all gung-ho to go full steam ahead and embrace as much of this as possible without reservation. Why do I feel like I'm wanting to stop this at some level? I don't get it. Like, I know I'm making the right choice. I know that I'm doing the right things. Why would I say no to any part of it? I feel great being on receiving the testosterone makes me feel balanced, makes me feel clearer and calmer. Certainly makes my experience of being in my body that much better. I feel really energized and motivated, and I feel right every day more and more in my body as this goes along. What's the problem exactly? And what we talked through and what I came to realize for myself was that I was carrying a whole set of fears that had to do with what I would say is my family and social like rogues gallery. I look at the men by and large who I've known in my life who have been role models or who have been father figures or who have been the not so shiny examples of manhood in my life. And the one exception being my grandfather, my mom's adopted family. The man that I call my grandfather was a tremendous human being and a big heart, loyal, very noble, very quiet kind of nobility. He's the real, like, I can put him in this place where I can look up to his example of heart and of the follow through of what love and devotion is, how he, he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but by and large, I feel like he's someone who has more integrity than most. And he was someone who really cultivated in me some of the best qualities, as well as empowering me to embrace my own interests and my own inner spirit and just kind of run with that. Uh, he's a topic for a whole other. I mean, I could just make an hour-long video just talking about him. So he's on the, he's there on one end saying, this is what I want to be. These are the kind of qualities I want to embrace. This is the kind of man I'd like to be able to be and show up in people's lives as this. And I really need to honor him and just say that, because while it seems like a tangent, I think it's perfect counterpoint to what it is that I'm going to describe next. What I've seen in others, as well as what I'm afraid I'm looking at in myself. And I talk in a few videos, I mentioned these poor examples and these poor role models and these bad energetics, and I don't want to forget to honor him for being not that, and being something much better. So, the rogues gallery of men and manhood, people who are, there's something that I tend to say about the men in my family of origin, is that the men are invisible. And when they're not because they were absent or they were detached or they were just somehow, they couldn't show up. When they weren't absent, there were, rampant dysfunctions, selfishness, laziness, arrogance, violence, and this prevailing attitude that, the women in their lives were good for little else other than breeding, have my children, but I'm not going to provide for them, and I'm not going to show up and be there as an emotional or psychological support. And, I may or may not be an addict, so I might just be drinking or, doing drugs or whatever. And sorry, but you just have to kind of, stand up and take care of this by yourself, and good luck with that. So that's the example that I've seen again and again and again, and even with men who seem to want to have a kind of integrity and want to embrace a different kind of relationship to the feminine, their wives, their girlfriends, their children, if any. There's still this attitude that everybody else and everything else takes a back seat to their own desires and wants and needs, some of which aren't even very well articulated, but somehow there's still that sense that, well, it's all about me, and everybody else just has to get in line with that. And a lot of anger, a lot of unresolved anger, which, as I've said before, is always a cover for fear. So we have, we have men who are in pain, who are wounded somehow, who are not guided well because our society doesn't really have a culture where we empower boys to become men of integrity, and so it's a struggle. And if you don't have the right role models, what do you do? So this is the kind of the background that I came in with and I'm working with, and where I was putting the brakes on was in saying, I don't want to be that. And because I don't want to be that, what then do I want to be? And how do I get through this ball of resistance that's sort of saying, stop the changes, because, stop the ride. Oh, I need to get off for a little while because I need to clear my head. And that was in conflict with my overall mood, which was go, go, go. I just want to go, and I want to allow the changes to happen as smoothly as they can and as quickly as they're supposed to. And so these two forces were kind of butting heads, and I didn't know what to do with that. So I went in really deep, and what I allowed myself to do was, first of all, just give up my unknowing. I had to just be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where this is going to bring me. And so I just kind of sunk into that, and I let myself feel that fear of the unknown, fear of not having resolution, fear of not having a solution at all. And as I did that, I found that the answers were coming. They were flowing because I'd let go of the need to try to grasp, and I'd also let myself sink into the fears of never coming up with a solution, not knowing if I was always going to be in this tug of war. So I then started receiving this clarity about what I could do with that resistance, these two different motivations bucking up against each other. I allowed myself to kind of play a scenario in my mind. And it's a lot of visualization. It's a lot of, using your imagination to kind of outsmart your own mind. So I played these scenarios out in my mind. I meditate. So I sat and I meditate, or I lay down and I meditate, and I let all the emotions come up while I'm sort of thinking through this film of, in the worst case scenario, how badass could I be? Really, like, how nasty, how selfish, how aggressive, how violent, how possessive, how any of that and all of it, how bad could it get? And I let myself become that again and again and again. I kept repeating this until my fear of that and my resistance to it started to dissolve. And it does. It's actually a biological thing that's happening, the science of which I think we're just beginning to understand. For those who've seen What the Bleep, do we know? Do you know? You kind of, if you watch that or you read anything about quantum mechanics and those kind of sciences, evolving sciences, emerging sciences, they're coming up with the answers. They're giving us the blueprint by which we can make sense of how this actually works. But from my own experience, what I feel is that the more that I allowed myself to move into the persona of mine that would say, you're a total asshole, and you're gonna exemplify the worst of everything, like and as I did that, I found that in my body, in my physical body, I started feeling a few things, and I'll map them out for you here, so you can kind of get a sense of what it is from the inside out, because it's very abstract otherwise. First of all, I started feeling a huge amount of energy in my solar plexus. So this is your navel, like the spot that's kind of a sphere behind your belly button, is your solar plexus. And it's there where all of the fight or flight stuff, all of the basic human animal instinct stuff resides. And what I felt was this loosening of energy there, which I didn't even realize had been totally knotted, because I've worked with that energy a lot, and I've loosened it, and it seems like every time I get through a big chunk of something, it's freer, and it feels like, well, maybe it's done. Of course, we're never done, but the size of the knot surprised me. And I guess this is something that I've been holding on to for a long time. And certainly, of course, all through this lifetime, through the experience of the body dysphoria. And when that released, a couple things happened. One, my digestion became a whole heck of a lot better and cleaner. That was a very solid symptomatic development after that release. The other thing that happened is I found myself less easily triggered into reaction with people emotionally. a lot calmer, a lot more stable, more centered. What I felt in other parts of my body, I've found that my ability to begin to relax my vocal cords, and I spoke a little bit about my relationship to my voice, my speaking and singing voice in the previous video. And that relationship to my vocal cords and my throat chakra has shifted quite a lot while I've been doing this specific work. And what I've found is that my ability to relax more consistently and to allow myself to just settle with my voice wherever it needs to be, and its tendency to be shaped by anxiety or tension or fear is less and less every day. I found a few other things that happened at the level of my like muscles and sinews and tissues and the fascia of the body. I found that this is a little tricky to explain. Let me kind of frame it this way. Through the course of the transition, by receiving the testosterone, my metabolism has increased, and that's something that many of us experience, though not all of us. And I experienced a tremendous amount of weight loss in the first year, and it's stabilized now a little bit. But I must have lost a good 60 pounds. I was really heavy at the beginning of all of this. And in the course of that time, what happened was I struggled to learn, and I'm still struggling a little bit to learn how to nurture my body, like how to eat properly, how to eat enough, how to eat the right kinds of things. And between the combination of the receiving the testosterone and the learning how to kind of tweak my lifestyle and self-care, and then this psychological block that I'd been experiencing and this emotional tension around embracing fully the various qualities of the masculine that I may or may not like, I was starting to lose muscle mass and getting really like kind of weak and having less muscle tone. And some of that was due to the rapid pace of the weight loss, and some of that had to do with this block, because what I was doing was, really what I felt I did was I pushed like a reset button, and I bumped myself right back to being 17 years old. That's in essence where my body has landed. I'm the same weight and size that I was my senior year in high school. And my body at this point in time, it's the frame of it resembles, a teenage boy. And what I'm seeing as I look at that and as I feel it from the inside out is I feel that overall that's a positive thing, but only if it doesn't go on for too long, because really it's not healthy to remain in this place physically, but also psychologically and emotionally it's not healthy to linger too long in I don't want to embrace a prolonged adolescence and end up being like Peter Pan or something. What I want is to move forward into my own maturity and fullness of potential, and so I don't want to just hang out in this place. That being my mindset and my motivation, I wanted to remove all of these limitations of those fears. So by assuming the identity of the worst badass, selfish SOB that you could think of, I pushed myself through the resistance to it. And coming out the other side, I have realized that, yeah, some of that is in me, and it's okay. That being said, that doesn't mean I don't have a responsibility to take those, the negative qualities, and work with them, work through them, and kind of allow them to settle in a way so that my choices, my behaviors, and the expression of my motivations aren't, I want them to be healthy, and I want them to be functional with other people, especially the women in my lives and with my daughter. So I'm working with those, but I stopped being afraid of those qualities, and I stopped being afraid of that side of me. And so now what I'm experiencing is I have gained 5 pounds of muscle mass in the past few months. That's great. I'm like really psyched. I've begun embracing the idea of building my body. And I mean like bodybuilding, but I also mean like building, constructing, like creating the scaffolding of the body that I can see in my mind as mine when it's in its fullest expression. I know what I want it to look like and feel like, and however much that I can move towards that. And it's through exercise, and it's through physical labor, and it's through eating properly, and it's through it's also through kind of projecting forward. And I've mentioned this before, and I haven't really talked about the mechanism of it. I don't know how clear I can be about doing that, but I'll try. There's this kind of exercise there's this visualization exercise, and it's much more than that. We're not just talking about imagination. This really does work. It affects you at the cellular level. But projecting forward that the body, the role that I want to play in my life through the body, and through my mature manhood, the way that I want to be able to express through my authentic voice. And that means it's authentic at any given moment. It is what it is. And to be able to use it as an instrument to express through now, and then a month from now, and 6 months from now, and a year from now. I have to accept what is in the moment, but I also have to draw from the future, from the horizon, what it is that I want to embrace and manifest for myself, as myself, in myself. So I'm kind of scanning ahead and picturing, imagining, visualizing that body, how it will function, what it's capable of. I'm looking forward into the relationships that are developing in my life and what I want them to become, how I want to be able to fit into them and behave and interact in them, and what are the goals for those relationships. I'm mapping them out, and I'm owning them as mine in the present moment, as if they were already manifest and already true. And I'm acting as if I'm choosing to embrace behaviors and attitudes that allow me to be that future self without being it, if that makes any sense. Hopefully it does. I think it's the best I can do at this moment. So what that will do then, and it's already happening, like I said, I'm seeing the bodily changes, and I'm seeing the psychological changes. I'm seeing the changes in my attitudes and behaviors, as well as, what's shaping my body. It's shaping my body. And this works along two different channels. So one, we have to accept and acknowledge and own the negative, and allow ourselves to become the worst of our fears, like all the things we don't want to see about ourselves, all the things we don't want to own. We have to take them on fully, without any resistance, and allowing ourselves to move through the fear. The other channel is embracing the positive, and allowing those two channels to kind of work together to create one seamless vision of self. I've heard from a few guys, like in the support groups, who who struggle with the same kind of thing. Their reaction to it is one of two basic orientations, I find, and it's not that simple or black, or it's not that black and white, but I kind of see that they gravitate towards one or the other. One, I see the guys who are like, I gotta be all macho and I gotta pose because I gotta prove my masculinity and I've gotta prove I'm a man. And that kind of turns me off a little bit. It's not, I feel like it's overcompensating. And I'm sorry, like, I don't mean to offend anybody. It's just that I find that by trying to go so far into the, what is in my mind, again, that like list of what the worst of masculinity, I think it's doing a real disservice to the self. I also think it's really limiting relationships and the potential to move around in the world, because it's just creating this bubble that's real but not real. I'm also acknowledging that is in a way doing what I'm describing by moving to that extreme and really putting on the role of the dude. That is in a way drawing to yourself what it is you need. And it is in a certain way doing what I've done inwardly through meditation and inner healing work. So I can't sit in judgment of it at all, and I can't really criticize it. I'm just voicing my personal opinion, and it's maybe a little twinge of that resistance still, like, and maybe there's more work that I need to do because of that. So I own that, and that's great. So then the other extreme is I find that there's also the people who've been a little bit more like me, like being a little timid and afraid to embrace a full model of masculinity and try it on, and see like what is this like to, all of that is guiding us to move us towards whatever it is for each of us to be a man. And again, we don't have a social map, we don't really have a cultural map, we don't have the means by which to move from point A to point B all the way through. In some cultures, all of this is highly ritualized, and there's a structure through which a boy grows and reaches maturity and is tried and tested to become a man. So there are levels of initiation. We don't have that, and in a way, a lot of the men's culture right now is trying to build that. And some more successfully than others. Some of those models, some of those guides and teachers and pioneers. And in the trans community, I think we're just beginning to realize that we have a need for that too. And that's really been on my mind a lot as I've taken up the challenge of creating these videos and trying to talk through and make sense of what it is that I've experienced and practiced in my healing work, and also in the very hard work of becoming, of moving through the transition, and building that kind of men's culture within the context of the trans community is something I'm feeling increasingly passionate about. And I know I've heard from some of my transgendered women friends at various stages of their journey in transformation, talking about the same thing, creating a women's culture within the trans community that allows them to explore their own true feminine nature, as well as creating a community within which the initiation, like returning to the sense of ritual, that each moment of initiation catapults you into a deeper level of yourself, makes and creates more function, and allows you to emerge more fully in your potential, so that your way of moving and walking and working in the world is effective. So I think that on both sides of the equation, this is desperately needed. And so my mind is moving in this direction. How is it that we can shape that and manifest that? And maybe these kinds of talks and discussions will help serve that. That's my hope and my prayer anyway. So I'm noticing this is getting a little long. I'm going to try to wrap this up here. And I think there's just going to continually be like part 4, part 5. I think I'm just going to keep working this series of videos until I'm kind of exhausted talking about it. And or, you know, I get feedback and I'm getting questions, which would be exceptionally helpful because I'm just kind of, I feel like I'm talking to the void a little bit here. And that's fine. I'm going to keep talking and keep recording, but if there's feedback, then I know what it is people are thinking and feeling or reacting to, and whether that's positive or negative. I want to hear it. If it's negative, please keep it respectful, but you know, I'd like to know if there are other people who are thinking about these things, experiencing these things, or have these same questions, or are feeling that same drive to build more community instead of this process being so isolated. So I'm at the heart of the healing of the body dysphoria. For me, working with that solution mindset is about looking backwards and looking forwards at the same time. That's really in a nutshell. It is the ability to see where we've been and all of the things that we've carried forward into the present moment, which have been limiting, which have been creating so much tension in us that our ability to step outside of emotional distress or psychological distress or negative patterns in relationships or a negative pattern of relationship with ourselves and our own bodies, bringing all that right up into this very present moment and being able to say, I want to stop that and I want to step outside of that. I don't want that to be controlling me anymore. And I'm in such pain and I'm in such emotional agony, and you know, I can't reconcile myself with my body. All of that needs to come right up to this present moment right now, and then a choice can be made. And that's really the first step, is being able to say, I have a choice, and choosing to be empowered, choosing to accept that there is a choice that can be made instead of just lingering. Once the choice has been made, we have to look at what is, you know, so we've said no to something, we've said no to a certain amount of suffering. And then what is the yes on the other side of that? The yes is that visualization. The yes is, that is the life that I want. That is the me that I want. That is, you know, and it doesn't have to remain in the future as something that we can't have at this moment, just because the outer conditions of our lives, what our body looks and feels like at this moment, wherever it is in the transition, whatever our relationships look like or don't look like, whatever our lifestyle is, or our ability to fit in somewhere in society, all of those are outer conditions, and they don't matter at all at a certain level. What matters is what's going on in here. And if what's going on in here is the hard work of releasing pain and fear and dysfunction and embracing what is most desired and needed, and choosing to, and I've described this before, it's the living as if it's already true. We're not talking like all, you know, it's all good, or, you know, it's not as if that's a denial of the suffering and the struggle. But what it is a an owning of not only I'm miserable, I'm suffering, and I'm struggling, but at the same moment being able to say and really own, I am also triumphant and successful and healthy and strong. And both of those things have to exist at the exact same moment. And it really is, it's outsmarting your brain. It's outsmarting the part of us that says, this is my only reality and I have no choice. And we need to get rid of that. But getting rid of that means I have hard work to do to get to the moment where I can get rid of it. So that stepping back into the fear, being willing to embrace that. And then on the other side of all of that is that, there's the good news, there's the resolution, there's the success that is waiting for us, because that really is our birthright, it's our inheritance, it's our it's who we really truly are at a pure level, that we are capable of fulfilling our potential. At any given moment, we can be completely in that place. And then what we'll find is the outer conditions begin to change because we've changed. And I'll probably talk about that in the next video, because I have some stories to tell about that to convince you, hopefully, that that's true. Because I've certainly witnessed it more times than I can describe in my life, and I'm grateful for it. But I'm going to close this for now. It's getting super long. And thank you for bearing with me as I ramble and meander through the map of all of this. I'm really trying hard to stay more focused. I'm starting to write notes so that I can get to the point a little bit more quickly, but I'm hoping that the personal stories and repeating some things helps people kind of reset themselves back to a clear place. So thank you very much, and again, please share, please like, please subscribe, and leave messages or touch base with me if you want to connect personally, and hoping that these are proving to be helpful and healing for some. So thank you very much. Have a great morning, and blessings.